Hello, Edwina Farley with you. Thanks for joining me and our team of reporters as we meet the people and visit the places that make up a big country. This week we're discovering life below the Earth's surface. We'll chat with a cave diving enthusiast who's exploring underground cave networks in South Australia, and it's proving to be good training as he prepares for a potential trip to Mars. We'll get tips on cooking with saffron from a former chef turned farmer who's growing flowers that produce the prized spice. And we'll meet the police officers who are swapping paperwork and patrol cars for footies. They're using the game to build positive relationships with young people in their remote communities.
If anybody in the northwest understands what the dry season's all about, there's two religions. It's basketball and football being the primary game that everybody lives for in the dry season up in the Kimberley and certainly in Pilbara as well. So I found it a brilliant avenue to, like I say, build those relationships and break down those barriers and build that rapport.
How a shared love of the game is creating bonds between law enforcement officers and the communities they police. That story coming up. First today, dressing for success. Women in regional Western Australia are getting a helping hand to re-enter the workforce with a new outfit and a confidence boost.
How about we try those things on? Yep. And see how we go.
For some people, getting a new outfit might not mean much, but for Melissa O'Donnell, it's changing her outlook on life.
I got it.
The top I'm wearing is more colour to me, and I actually feel brighter than what I have been.
She's been styled by Dress for Success, a global charity dedicated to empowering women to achieve economic independence.
A much softer look automatically.
Actually, that's
really well with your skin tone
and your eyes.
Hello, I'm Madison Snow. I'm here with Melissa in her hometown of Kalgoorlie in the Goldfields region of Western Australia, where she is getting a styling session to help her prepare for re-entering the workforce. Melissa has been looking for work for 2 years and has found it challenging as arthritis has stopped her from doing what she loves.
I was an aged care worker. After having kids, I couldn't lift the elderly anymore or push things or help them into the things. So the Max Employment suggested office admin where you're in a chair and you sit there and type and it's not so hard on my back.
She's also struggled with her self-esteem.
I lack the confidence. I go to job interviews and I sit there and I'm nervous. I was negative myself. I thought people would judge me for my weight. I went to a job interview the other day and did a try on and got told I wasn't pretty enough. So that's where my lack of confidence, I judged myself a lot.
CEO of Goldfields Women's Healthcare Centre, Gloria Moyle, organised for Dress for Success Perth to come to Kalgoorlie-Boulder to run workshops. It's the first time the charity has visited regional Western Australia.
It's a wonderful little not-for-profit that has very similar values and mission statement to us, and that is to empower women, but particularly to get them confident and ready to get back into the workplace if they've been disadvantaged or vulnerable at any stage of life. Particularly here in the Goldfields, we're looking at a lot of family and domestic violence situations where people are starting off again, but also the COVID-19 pandemic last year, a lot of people were out of work, particularly women. We also know there's a lot of homelessness happening here and WA-wide. We've also got a lot of carers here that are predominantly women who have either stopped looking after their loved ones or they've passed on, and it's actually time for them to regain meaningful employment and get back into the workforce. And sometimes you just don't have the finances or the support systems to do that.
Dress for Success gives women new clothes for job interviews and run free workshops teaching them how to do their makeup, manage their finances and improve interview skills.
Is to empower you with knowledge on makeup and self-care to just build your confidence with your look and who you are.
Dress for Success manager Karen Woodcock says confidence is key.
A lot of them have been through personal traumas where their confidence has been eroded. So we do a lot of work with women who've been in corrective services facilities. We do a lot of work with women who are long-time carers and women who are domestic violence survivors. And for various reasons, their confidence has been eroded and they don't recognise that they've actually got a lot of skills. We know they have the skills, they're just buried. So it's helping them unpack those skills and recognise that those skills are important in a workplace.
Throw your hat in. What have you got to lose? Throw your hat in.
Dress for Success volunteer Nadia Marzo runs workshops teaching women interview skills and how to make great first impressions.
They'll see a position advertised and they don't recognise the skills they have because it doesn't fit the little box of what's being advertised. There might be a position that talks about organisational skills. And I can remember one person we had who said, I don't have organisational skills. When you talk to her, she had a child with disability and she also looked after her ageing parents. Her organisational skills, she could have done the Olympics. And also, she didn't recognise the skills that she had for applying for funding. You know, they just don't recognise how transferable they are. So we try to help them realise that they've got so much to offer that they're just not aware of.
All the volunteers came to Kalgoorlie on their own time, but Miss Marzo says it's worth it.
Look, even today, a woman has gone off for an interview and hopefully it all goes well and she'll come back, that we met yesterday. A lady yesterday who came in with her partner and he was just also so supportive of her and just the appreciation because they come in and they will say things like, I don't wear dresses. And we go, okay, because you've got to be comfortable. Amuse me. Just put on a dress. They put on a dress and they just look fantastic. She showed her partner and he said, you look delicious.
The Goldfields is rich with employment opportunities and Gloria Moyle questions why some women aren't able to access them.
I think it's something that we really need to focus on. I think that is definitely in the Goldfields a need. We know being women is a disadvantage, unfortunately, but also looking at our called women, our Aboriginal women. We've got our LGBTQI community. We need to be diverse and be inclusive. You know, there are so many different women particularly who have so much to offer, yet, you know, perhaps they've been out of the workforce, as I said, for caring or they're looking after their children or whatever their roles are. I think it's time that we really embrace that and looked at the synergy that, you know, a different point of view can bring to your workforce, whatever that is. And, you know, there are at times some barriers to that. And I think really all our local employers need to really be open to the diversity and inclusiveness that we're really supporting here.
Melissa might not have a job just yet, but she says the Dress for Success volunteers changed her perspective.
Today has been an eye-opener and I've actually stopped judging myself and I'm going to come out on the better side of it.
That was meant to be.
Level on that side and hammy on that side. 0. Okay, stay. Okay, hey, stay in your circle. Stay in your circle. Stay in your circle. All right, this time.
At this sports ground in Broome in the Kimberley region of Western Australia, police officers are trying out a different role to their normal day of policing work. Stepping away from patrol cars and paperwork, they're picking up Australian rules footballs and joining in a footy clinic with local youth.
Good work! Oh, close winners. There you go.
Hello, I'm Matt Bamford. I'm here watching on as junior players take part in a goal-kicking drill. This clinic is one of a series being held across the region as part of a push for more police officers to learn football coaching skills. WA Police has teamed up with the Fremantle Dockers Club to help local officers gain their coaching accreditation and build better community relationships in this football-loving region. Sergeant Shane Scott is Broome District's Youth Policing Coordinator.
A big part of what we do is engaging with young people and building relationships. So sport, particularly in towns like Broome, is massive. So a way for my guys to sort of break down and build those relationships is to get out on the ground and be involved at the grassroots level.
And what about actually taking that step to get the coaching accreditation?
Yeah, it's building those relationships not only with the kids but also with people like the Fremantle Dockers. I've been up in Broome since November, but I've got 3 boys who have all played through junior football. They're adults now, and their friends and my close group of friends have all come from the football community. So not only is it building relationships with the kids, but it's their parents and the broader community. So really looking forward to it.
And what's the feedback like from the officers? Is this something that they're interested in doing, they want to do?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, who wouldn't want to be able to come down to the ground and have a kick of the footy with a few of the kids. And as I said, just get to talk to them, find out what's going on in their day, what challenges they're facing, and as a stripper right back and have a kick of the footy. Look, we'll make sure that we've got footballs in our cars as we're driving around. I'm more than happy to stop up on the side of the road and, have a handball or a kick to kick and, just talk to the kids and find out what's going on.
What's your plan for where this could go?
Yeah, look, for me, it's just about providing some stability and engagement, to the kids of Broome. And then out of that, finding out, look, we may come across the next Roger Hayden, from the streets of Broome. So giving them the opportunity to have a crack at it, with the guidance from us. Quite often they see, the guys driving around in the police cars and, they're going from job to job and don't have the opportunity to engage, or, there's some negative, feedback or comments around police. So this is just an ideal way for us to break those barriers and, identify those kids that potentially, could go on to be either, really good footballers or just, break them out of some sort of cycle that they're in.
Yeah, and it's proactive policing, right?
Yeah, look, we find the best relationships we build, with some of the young people in town, not just for their perspective, but also that whole sort of family group perspective, and it's giving them the confidence to be able to tell us when things aren't sort of going quite so well for them, and reaching out and asking for some support. And, football, sport in general just breaks that down, and you get that opportunity to talk to the kids and their families. They know who you are at a personal level, and, I'm starting to get, families and parents contacting me at all times of the day, asking questions. So although it's, it's quite full on, but you love it. It's just what you're here for.
Daddy, he got one. I wanted to do a banana. Oh, go. What is this?
Football has been an essential part of Senior Sergeant Andy Henshaw's work. He was a long-serving officer in WA's largest Aboriginal community, Bijadanga, south of Broome, and an assistant coach for the footy team. He says the game is a great way to build relationships and open up communication with local communities.
Look, I found benefits when I was in Bijadanga, just the relationships you're able to build with the community and certainly with the players, and that's long-lasting, and that's what I'm endeavouring to do up the peninsula, build the relationships with community members, and that just breaks down those barriers and builds that trust with community members, and that dispels that distrust of the police.
And why footy? Why do you think footy is the thing that cuts through?
I think that if anybody in the Northwest understands what the dry season's all about, there's two religions, it's basketball and football being the primary game that everybody lives for in the dry season up in the Kimberley and certainly in Pilbara as well. So that's a great avenue. I've found it a brilliant avenue to, like I say, build those relationships and break down those barriers and build that rapport.
And what's it like there's a pretty good turnout here from lots of different officers, potentially looking at getting their coaching accreditation. What's it like to see that kind of participation?
It's fantastic, absolutely fantastic, and I've reaped the benefits of doing such course. I'm fortunate to be a coach, and stuff like this reaffirms why we're out here doing what we're doing.
20 hand passes, ready to go. And you got to count out loud.
Senior Sergeant Andy Henshaw of WA Police. He was speaking with our reporter Matt Bamford in Broome. And you can see more on that story at the RN homepage. Just look for a Big Country under the Programs tab. You're with Edwina Farley on RN. Still to come, the delicate and labour-intensive job of harvesting saffron. And we're meeting an explorer with a spirit of adventure. For now, he's heading underground, but if things go to plan, he could be venturing into space.
So this is Pines Cave. It's probably one of the most well-known around. The water level used to be much higher, so about sort of where we are here, the bottom of the walkway. But yeah, people have been diving this since the 70s, to the best of my knowledge. It's a gorgeous cave and it's quite extensive.
This part of southeast South Australia is a mecca for cave divers and a special spot for Josh Richards.
And off to the right-hand side here, there's actually a set of chimneys that drop down. They zigzag back on themselves, a bit of a spider web, but they actually wind up. There's a huge room on the other side of the road over there called the Crazy Czech Room that was found in the early 90s, I think, by a couple of Czech doctors who'd actually come over and done their training here. And during their sort of dives of pines, they discovered a tunnel that no one had kind of seen before and squeezed down through it. And the tunnel's gotten a bit bigger now, but yeah, there's a whole other room that's huge. And a little bit further, about 50, 60 metres further on, is another cave. And there have been a lot of questions for the last 20 years about whether or not there's a connection between the two. And this whole area is riddled with caves, but this is the one that people come to quite regularly, and people wanting to dive, wanting to explore. It's not what everyone does, but there are still things being discovered, which is pretty cool.
Hello, I'm Beck Wetham. I'm here with Josh near the entrance to Pines Caves in a forest not far from Mount Gambier. At the start of this year, 35-year-old Josh took on a nearby accommodation business that caters to visiting cave divers. In between running tours, he can be found metres underground, exploring this region's mammoth cave networks.
The water down here is ridiculous. It's almost like being in a shopping centre or somewhere like that, filled with water, and you've got the opportunity to drift up to groceries on third floor or something like that. You get to go and explore all these different places, but instead of, floating through a shopping centre, you're floating through this ridiculously amazing, huge chamber with all these tunnels and all these different areas off it to go and explore.
And what's the feeling like when you come out at the end? It must open up. You've got all this light flooding in, is it?
You forget. You actually forget about the world. I've gone diving here and it been scorching hot, and it's a relief to get into the water, and then you focus on the dive and go and do the dive and you come back up and you're like, oh wow, no, it's still scorching hot, or it's raining or whatever. You forget about the weather, you forget about the world, you forget about everything except what you're doing. I don't know about relief. It's more oh wow, hang on, no, there's the rest of the universe still going on out here, but my universe has shrunk down to whatever I'm doing there and then. So it's very zen. It's very like in the moment. Yeah, I come up at the end of a dive and I suddenly remember that life has kept going for the 2 hours I've been underwater.
Josh's journey to cave diving has been a roundabout one. His father worked as a diver in the military, and he always expected to follow in his footsteps. He studied physics at university, joined the army as a combat engineer, relocated to the United Kingdom, tried his hand at stand-up comedy, wrote a couple of books before putting down roots in this cave diving community. Now he's found his home on Earth, but he'd be prepared to give it all up if an opportunity arose to venture into space. 5 years ago, Josh Richards made the shortlist of 100 candidates with Mars One, a private consortium aiming to establish a permanent settlement on the Red Planet. If selected, he'd undertake a one-way trip, leaving Earth forever.
So there's part of me that sort of goes, preparing for leaving it all behind, blah, blah. And even as I suppose, inverted commas, put down roots here and buy a house and invest in the cave diving community here and invest in friendships and all that sort of stuff, there's still a part in the back of my head that goes, if you had the opportunity to go to Mars, you'd sell all of this, you'd get rid of this stuff in a heartbeat. It's just about being aware of potentials, but also living here and now. I still find a huge amount of purpose by being involved with Mars One. It may not ever go anywhere. The signs aren't great, but I draw a huge amount of purpose from the idea that we should be going and exploring space, that we should, as a species, should be out there and discovering new things and exploring.
It seems that, all the careers that you have had, whilst they do take a serious level of commitment, you've been able to back away when you realise it doesn't align with your morals or, what you originally envisioned. With space, I feel like you're really committing for the long haul. Is there any part of you that goes, maybe I'll get there and realise?
Yeah. I think the big one with, especially with Mars and the idea of going one way, that purpose that I'm talking about becomes much, much bigger than me. It's not just about fulfillment of personal goals or personal interests or anything like that. I don't care if I don't go, but I care about someone going. And so if I can put my hand up and say, this is a thing that I'll support by being involved with, then I have to do that.
and Josh has found some similarities between his passions of cave diving and space exploration.
People who come here have different motivations for why they cave dive, but there are people who are genuine explorers. They really want to go out and find new caves, connect caves that are close to each other, do all these weird and wonderful things that you can't just do with a robot. You actually have to send people in to do this sort of stuff. There's an active opportunity to do that. So in some ways, it's fulfilling that explorer element that wants to go out and go to Mars, but I actually have the opportunity to explore here, to go and dive these caves, to learn more about the geology, how they connect to each other, why they form, all those sort of things.
We're just picking a few flowers at the minute. We're kind of waiting for the cold weather at the end of this week. We'll expect more.
As the warmer summer days give way to cooler autumn temperatures in this part of central Victoria, Rosemary Pamick's saffron plants start to bloom with brilliant purple flowers.
It is a bit of a bell curve, so it'll start off quite slowly, and then you'll find you'll have, 1,000, 2,000 flowers in the middle of the season, and then the season will slowly die off again until around middle of May, definitely, the season will be over and the corms will start going slowly into their dormant period over summer.
Hello, I'm Eden Hennanen. I'm here with Rosemary on her property in the central Victorian town of Denali, where she grows saffron crocus. She then carefully picks and dries the flowers to collect their crimson stigma that's highly prized as a cooking ingredient. Saffron is not only one of the world's most expensive crops, it's also very delicate and labour-intensive to harvest.
During harvest, I'll come out to the paddock around 7:30 in the morning and hand pick each flower. There is a reason why it does need to be done by hand rather than by machine. You want to keep as much of the thread intact as you can. So I don't want broken threads. The flower is picked quite delicately from the plant. You actually want to pick them when the petals are still quite closed. Again, you want to protect the threads from being exposed to too much sunlight because that can degrade their quality as well. So that's why we go out first thing in the morning and pick them all before the flowers open, and then I'll take them into our drying shed. I actually pick and dry on the same day. Once it is dried, I will package it up into our different sizes. So some may be catering size for cafes and restaurants, or our little 100 milligrams, which I sell with recipe cards, which the home cook can go and have a little play with and experiment with in the kitchen.
100 milligrams, it sounds quite a bizarre amount to be sending out.
It does, and part of my job is to teach people how to get the most out of their saffron. So for those who maybe haven't used it often, there's two ways of using saffron. You can toast the threads, and a lot of Indian dishes will call for your spices to be toasted together, and that's one way. Or the other way is to infuse it like a tea, so warm up the liquid that you're cooking with. So it might be a chicken stock or a veg stock, or if you're making a dairy-based ice cream, you might warm up your milk and leave the saffron in the warm liquid for at least an hour to infuse, and that'll bring out all the colours and the flavours, and then you can go on and make your dish. And saffron is not one of those flavours that will punch you in the face like chilli. It does need that little bit of time to develop, so you'll often find with even paellas and curries that you'll use it in, the flavour will be even stronger the day after. So
We're looking at some raised beds here. You're growing them a little differently to the way most growers would grow saffron. Tell me about this.
Yeah, well, we've chosen to do that for a couple of reasons. We are quite conscious of what water we use on the farm, being off-grid, and I'm also quite conscious of what chemicals are used to turn our natural clay into the kind of friable soil that saffron needs. So I didn't want to rip up the whole front paddock and add a whole lot of fertilisers and whatever else we needed to do to turn that into saffron-friendly soil. So instead, what we've done is use the garden beds, and that way I really only need to micromanage our garden beds. saffron is actually quite sensitive to waterlogged soil. By having them up off the ground, I can really guarantee good drainage.
Why did you decide to grow this particular spice?
So when we first came out to the farm, because my background is in the food industry, I worked as a chef in kitchens in Melbourne for many years. So I knew I wanted to do something with food. And because we're off-grid, I'm not sure if people are aware, but anything with a refrigeration unit or a heating element can drain your battery bank. So I knew I wanted something that didn't need to be refrigerated. It has low energy requirements and also the low water requirements. So yeah, and it was also something that was a little bit different, and I could see huge possibilities in all the recipes that I could come up with. In history, it's also been used as a fabric dye, so I kind of was quite inspired to go down that track as well.
And how much are you hoping to harvest this season?
Good question, and I could give you a number, but nature will make a liar out of me, so I shouldn't really count my chickens before they hatch.
Rosemary Panic is growing saffron in central Victoria, where she spoke with Eden Hennanen. And before that, Beck Wetham introduced us to Josh Richards, who's been shortlisted for a one-way trip to Mars as part of the Mars One program. But for now, he's exploring underground caves in southeast South Australia. You can read more of Josh's story and all the stories on today's program. Just head online to abc.net.au/rn and look for A Big Country under the Programs tab. That's the show for today. I'll talk to you next week.